The other day I was walking downtown, just looking at everybody. Everybody's so busy, always doing something, going somewhere. It's like a constant hustle and bustle. As I was walking around, a verse came to mind. I thought of Psalm 16:11. You have shown me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy, and at your right hand are pleasures forevermore. And it got me thinking about how we're always looking to do something, always going somewhere, always involved in something to keep our lives from being quiet, because we all need to have fulfillment. And in one sense, it's that constant pleasure seeking. And I thought about what that verse really means. Here is the psalmist testifying that in the presence of God, he finds fullness of joy. In the presence of God, he finds pleasure. Two things that seem like a dichotomy to us, because most times I think we can agree that we don't necessarily think of the presence of God or religious things as being full of joy. When we think of going to church, when we think of religion, we often think of solemnness and quiet and even boring. So it doesn't make sense to us. We are thinking in our heads that, it must be one of two things. Basically, either the person that wrote this didn't really know what he was talking about joy and pleasure found in the presence of God. We can't reconcile that in our minds. Or the joy and the pleasure that he was talking about is something different from, what we would want. We tell people, that may be good for you, but that's, not the thing for me. You see, everybody's doing something, going somewhere. And if we're sitting down, we're on our cell phones. There's no time for any kind of quiet. There's always noise surrounding us. Now, this is interesting because we're always trying to fill our lives with something to give it meaning, something to give us pleasure, something to give us joy. And a lot of times we look in the wrong places. We get involved in doing things that are not necessarily good for us, but we do them because they feel good. Here in Canada, it's really interesting. When you buy a pack of cigarettes, there's a law that says that there has to be printed on that package graphic images and warnings showing what these things can do to you. There's warnings that tell us, children see, children do. Any kind of warning to try and let people know that they're getting involved in something that is not necessarily good, but yet we still get involved in it. We do these things because it solves a problem for us. It gives us pleasure. It gives us relaxation. So there's a lot of things that we get involved in. There's a lot of things that we do that are not necessarily the best thing for us. But here's an interesting thing, and some people don't like to recognize this, but it's true that the things that we like and the things that we dislike actually can change. What does it for me right now may not be the same thing that I enjoy 5 years from now. And a lot of what has the power to change us has to do with our relationships, the crowd that we hang out with. Now this is interesting because God molded human relationships in such a way to be a model of something greater. God gave us the ability to be able to raise and have kids so that we could understand what it means to be His kids. When somebody gets involved in a relationship, there may be things that they learn to like because of that relationship. There may be things that they never enjoyed doing before, but they do now because they enjoy being able to do that thing in the presence of this person that they care about. Now, because everything on this earth is actually a model of something greater, the fact is that true joy is actually found in the greatest relationship of all. This is a very difficult thing for a lot of people to grasp. The psalmist here, he's talking about joy and pleasure being found in the presence of God, which implies a relationship with God. And on an earthly level, we see that people enjoy being in relationships with people because we can get joy and pleasure out of our relationships. So obviously the psalmist a person who had access to everything. This was King David. He could get anything that he wanted, but yet he's testified and he said that it is in the presence of God that true joy and everlasting pleasure is found. This is not just a knowledge about God. This is a relationship with God. So how do we really find a relationship with God? I think about the story of Elijah in 1 Kings 19. Remember when Elijah was afraid and he was running away from Jezebel because she had threatened to kill him. So he runs up into this cave to hide, and an angel comes out to him and gives him food and tells him that God wants to speak with him. So he goes out to the mouth of the cave, and an enormous hurricane comes by and tears the rocks apart and splits things. And God is not in the hurricane. And then an earthquake happens. Rumble shakes everything, and God is not in the earthquake. And a fire comes by and heats everything up. God is not in the fire. And then a still, small voice is heard, like a soft whisper. And the prophet hears the voice of God in the still, small voice. The psalmist says, "Be still and know that I am God." Be still and know that I am God. And being still almost implies a quietness. And we have so many sources of noise around us. We're always doing something, always going somewhere, always plugged into some sort of media. We rarely have time to be still. We're always looking for some sense of fulfillment, but some of us realize that the true sense of fulfillment is found in relationships with other people. And even fewer of us recognize that the ultimate fulfillment is found in a relationship with our Creator. I remember years ago when I was depressed and suicidal, I couldn't help but fill my mind with all sorts of noise in order to get my thoughts off of the things that were destroying me inside. I would come home from school and I would lay down on the ground and plug into my iPod and just listen to music all day. It was the only thing that I knew how to do. I would go out and I would do things that I knew I shouldn't be involved in. I'd sit down and I'd be watching movies because the noise and everything that I was putting into my mind, there was a certain kind of solace that I found in the noise because I couldn't bear to have my mind quiet and have to deal with reality and the actual thoughts that would come into my head. I know that people were praying for me. And I remember one day God just impressed me. And I remembered that there was a time when I actually believed that God had the answer for all of my problems. I was led to actually try something that I had never tried before. I decided that it was time to let go and grab hold. And today I stand before you with an amazing testimony that God has brought me up out of the miry clay and set my feet upon a rock, and He has established my steps. Today we have a ministry called Unseen Media Group, and our goal is to reach out to other young people that may be struggling with distractions, that may be struggling with temptations, that may be struggling with addictions, that may be struggling with media, they may be struggling with influences that are not beneficial to them. And we've created a project called the War Plans Project. So one of the elements of this project are called War Plans events. Now these are events that we put on at churches or other locations, and these events are run completely by young people. So before the event, we bring in a group of young people and they get trained on how to run small groups and how to make presentations and how to reach out to their own. And these discipleship type events introduce young people to their own culture and to a lot of the struggles that are going on. Why youth culture is fundamentally different than it was 30 years ago. This is an evangelistic event that is marketed primarily through Facebook and social networking. And our idea is to bring in as many young people as possible so that they can have an experience that they've never had before. If you're watching this video on YouTube because you received an email talking about the War Plans events, I encourage you to read through that email and take a look at the different topics that we're wanting to introduce and the structure of these War Plans events. If you know any young person that would be interested in getting involved in one of these events, or if you're able to support us financially or know somebody that would be interested in supporting a ministry like this, I encourage you to get in contact with us through our website or give us a call. We're in the process of raising funds to develop the materials that we need to actually put together one of these events, and we wouldn't be able to do it without you.